hope this message finds you in a peaceful moment tonight. I've been thinking about you all day. How was your day? Was it busy, or did you get a chance to rest a little? Today, my day was, well, let's just say it was one of those long days. You know the kind, when the hours feel like they stretch endlessly, and yet, somehow, the day still slips by. It rained for a while this afternoon, and I found myself staring out of the window, watching the droplets race each other down the glass. It made me wonder if you saw the rain too. Did you? I left some food at home for you. It's nothing fancy, just a little something I thought you might enjoy. Make sure to heat it up, okay? And don't forget to eat. It's important to keep your energy up. I wish I could be there with you tonight, to sit at the table and share a meal, to ask you about the little details of your day. The things that might seem too small to matter, but are the ones I love hearing the most. Maybe you'll tell me about them next time. My child, can I ask you for a little favor? Close your eyes for me, just for a moment. I know it might feel strange to hear me like this, just my voice in the quiet of the night. I wish I could be there with you to see your face, but tonight, this voice note will have to do. I'm sorry I couldn't make it home. Take a deep breath, my child, slowly, in and out. Let the world around you fade away, just for a while. Imagine that I'm right there beside you, talking to you like we always do. This conversation might be a little longer than usual, but I think you'll like it. There's something I've been thinking about, something I want to share with you. It's about the way we see the world, what we notice, what we cherish, and how we find beauty even in the smallest, most unexpected things. It's a thought I've carried with me through the day, and I hope it might bring you some comfort or inspiration tonight. Are your eyes still closed? Good. Just listen, my child, and let's take this journey together. My child, I hope you've taken a moment to settle down, maybe wrapped yourself in a blanket, or just found a quiet corner to listen. You know, as I sit here recording this for you, I've been thinking a lot about something simple, yet powerful. Gratitude. It's a word we hear often, but have you ever stopped to wonder what it truly means? Gratitude, my child, is like a gentle flame. It doesn't need much to burn, yet it lights up even the darkest of places. It's the act of recognizing the little gifts life gives us, things so ordinary that we often overlook them. Today, I caught myself in a moment of gratitude. I was walking to my car after a long day, and the air was crisp and cool. The sky had turned a deep orange as the sun set, and for a moment, I just stopped and breathed it all in. It wasn't anything grand, but it reminded me how beautiful life can be, even in its simplest moments. Have you ever had a moment like that, my child? A small, fleeting instance where you felt thankful without even trying? Maybe it was the sound of laughter, the way sunlight streams through the window, or even the taste of your favorite meal. Gratitude isn't just about the big things. It's about seeing the beauty in what's already here. It teaches us that life, in all its imperfections, is still full of wonder. Now, let's talk a little more about why gratitude matters and how it connects to the way we live our lives. Imagine waking up and putting on a pair of glasses. If the lens is clear, you see everything with clarity and purpose. But if the lens is smudged with stress or complaints, everything feels dull and heavy. Gratitude is the lens that brings clarity. Also, let me tell you a story. The office was chaotic, filled with meetings, deadlines, and a mountain of paperwork. I could have spent the whole day thinking about how tired I felt or how much I still had to do. But then, during my lunch break, I caught sight of an old couple sharing a meal together. They were laughing, completely unbothered by the rush of the world around them. That moment, it reminded me to pause, to be grateful for the simple joy of being alive, even on a busy day. Gratitude isn't about waiting for perfect moments, my child. It's about finding meaning in the imperfect ones. You don't need grand gestures to feel gratitude. It's in the way the world offers little treasures, often when we least expect them. The smell of coffee in the morning, the comfort of a good book, or the way someone remembers to ask how you're doing, these are the threads that hold the fabric of life together. But here's something important to remember. Gratitude isn't just for what we receive. It's also for what we can give. Have you ever seen someone's face light up because of a small kindness you offered? A smile, a word of encouragement, or just being there for them? That's gratitude too, the kind that flows outward. The beauty of gratitude is that it's contagious. When you live with a grateful heart, you inspire others to do the same. And together, we create a world that feels just a little bit brighter. My child, let's take another step into this journey for a bigger perspective of understanding gratitude. I read once that gratitude has the power to rewire the brain. Scientists have found that when we focus on what we're grateful for, we train our minds to see more of the good in life. It's like tending to a garden. The more we water and care for the flowers, the more they bloom. But I know sometimes it's hard to feel grateful, especially when life feels overwhelming or unfair. It's easy to focus on what's missing, on what we wish could be different. I've been there too. There were days I felt weighed down by all the things I couldn't control. But do you know what helped? Taking a moment, even in the midst of chaos, to find one thing, just one, that I could be thankful for. Let me tell you a story. I want to share with you a lesson I've learned from the ancient Stoics, one about gratitude. It's not the kind of gratitude that only appears when things go perfectly, but the kind that remains steady, even when life gets hard. There was a philosopher named Epictitus, a man who spent much of his life as a slave before gaining his freedom. Despite his hardships, he taught that he should be grateful, not for how the world treats him, but for how he has the power to respond. Imagine this. Epictetus once said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." I thought about that during a difficult time in my life. I was working a job that felt thankless, the kind of work where no one notices the effort you put in. It felt unfair, exhausting, even humiliating at times. But one day I decided to shift my perspective. Instead of focusing on what I didn't have, recognition, ease, or comfort, I looked at what I could control. And do you know what I found? I had the power to be grateful for the lessons hidden in those struggles. I learned patience in the long hours, resilience in the face of criticism, and humility in realizing that not every good deed gets immediate rewards. That's what the Stoics mean, my child, when they speak of gratitude. It's about appreciating not just the roses, but also the thorns, for they teach us how to handle the flower more carefully. There's another story about Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who carried the weight of an empire on his shoulders. In his private writings, he reminded himself to be thankful, even for the difficult people in his life. He saw them as opportunities to practice kindness and self-control. Can you imagine that? Being grateful for those who test your patience? So my child, let me ask you, is there something in your life right now that feels hard, unfair, or overwhelming? What if you looked at it differently? Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you could ask, "What is this teaching me?" That's where gratitude begins, not in perfection, but in perspective. Gratitude, my child, isn't about pretending everything is easy. It's about seeing that even the hardest days can shape us into stronger, wiser people. And that in itself is something to be thankful for. Next is about Aristotle, one of the greatest philosophers of all time. He lived over 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece, but his wisdom remains as relevant today as it was then. Aristotle believed that a life worth living is one filled with purpose and virtue. And at the heart of his philosophy is something we call eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is a beautiful word. It means more than just happiness. It's about flourishing. Living a life of meaning, where your actions align with your values and contribute to something greater than yourself. Aristotle thought this kind of life wasn't something that happened by accident. It's something we build, choice by choice, moment by moment. He said that true fulfillment comes not from seeking pleasure or avoiding pain, but from striving to become the best version of yourself. He taught that virtues like courage, honesty, kindness, and wisdom are the building blocks of a meaningful life. And do you know what else he said? That practicing these virtues is like exercising a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger you become. So I decided to start small. I made an effort to be more present with the people around me, to listen carefully instead of thinking about what I'd say next. I took on challenges that scared me, even when it would have been easier to avoid them. And slowly, my child, I began to feel something shift. Life started to feel richer, deeper, more fulfilling. Aristotle believed that every person has a unique role to play in the world, a purpose that's tied to their talents and passions. He called it their telos, their ultimate goal. Finding your telos, he said, is one of the most important journeys you'll ever take. It's not always easy, and it might take years to figure out, but the search itself is part of what makes life meaningful. I'd like to ask you something. What do you think makes a person truly happy? Is it the things they own, the success they achieve, or the relationships they build? Aristotle would argue that it's none of these on their own, but rather the way they live, the choices they make to grow in virtue, to contribute, to love. I hope this story inspires you as much as it inspires me. Aristotle's wisdom reminds us that life isn't about chasing after temporary pleasures. It's about building something lasting, something true. You know what's also amazing? Gratitude doesn't just affect your mind, it affects your body too. Studies have shown that people who practice gratitude sleep better, have lower stress levels, and even have stronger immune systems. Isn't that incredible? Something as simple as saying thank you, whether it's to someone else or just silently to yourself, can make you healthier. I want to share a small practice with you. Every night before you go to sleep, think of 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be grand. Even the smallest things count. Maybe it's a kind word someone said to you, or the way the rain sounded as it fell outside your window. Try it tonight, my child, and see how it feels. My child, are you still awake? Or maybe you've already drifted off to sleep, haven't you? That's all right. I wouldn't blame you. It's been a long day, hasn't it? Even if you're asleep, I'll keep talking. It's okay if these words reach you only in dreams. Sometimes I feel like these moments are more for me than for you. It's my way of staying close, of sharing thoughts and stories I hope will guide you, whether you're awake to hear them or not. You see, talking to you is like planting seeds in a quiet garden. Even if the gardener doesn't see them grow right away, they'll bloom when the time is right. So whether you're listening or simply resting, I hope my words find their place in your heart. Now, if you're still with me, and I suspect you are, curious as always, let's move to something a bit more complex. It's about choice, my child. Free will and determinism. Have you ever wondered how much control we really have over our lives? Is everything we do a result of our own choices, or are we following a path that's already laid out for us? It's a question that has puzzled the greatest thinkers for centuries. But don't worry, I'll keep it simple. Step by step, and see what will you uncover. My child, free will is the idea that we can make decisions independently of any external influences or predetermined forces. It's the belief that we are the ones in charge of our actions. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But it raises a lot of important questions. Do we really have control over our lives? Can we shape our future by the choices we make, or is everything already decided for us? Now let me share some thoughts from 2 great thinkers on this idea. Jean-Paul Sartre, a French philosopher, believed in what he called radical freedom. He thought that we are born into a world with no predefined meaning, and that our choices create who we are. According to him, we are free to choose who we want to be. But with that freedom comes great responsibility. It's not just about making decisions, but taking responsibility for the consequences of those decisions. Sartre believed that we can't blame anyone or anything else for the choices we make. It's all on us. Then there's William James, an American philosopher. He argued that free will is essential for moral responsibility. If we don't have the power to make our own choices, how can we be held accountable for anything? He thought that if our actions were all determined by external forces, we wouldn't be able to truly say we are responsible for anything. Free will, for James, is the foundation of morality. Without it, the concept of right and wrong wouldn't even exist. So my child, think about this. Every time you make a decision, big or small, you're exercising your free will. You're shaping your future, and that's something powerful. It means you have the ability to decide who you want to become, regardless of the world around you. It's a responsibility, but also a gift. So be mindful of your choices, and remember that you have the power to shape your life. Now that we've talked about free will, let's explore the opposite side of the coin, determinism. It's a bit heavier, but I want you to think about it for a moment. Determinism is the idea that everything in the universe, including our actions, is caused by preceding events. It means that everything happens for a reason, And that reason is based on natural laws, whether in the physical world or in our minds. In other words, every choice we make, every action we take, is the result of something that happened before it, like a chain reaction. This idea raises some tough questions. If everything is determined, if all our actions are the result of past events, how can we truly be held accountable for what we do? If our choices are merely the result of causes we don't control, are they just an illusion? Do we really have any freedom at all? There were some great minds who thought deeply about this. Take Baruch Spinoza, for example. He was a Dutch philosopher who believed that human actions, like everything else in the world, are determined by nature and the forces of the universe. According to him, everything that happens is just a part of the grand web of cause and effect. And we, as human beings, are not exempt from that. He thought that our actions are shaped by external forces, and even our thoughts and feelings are just reactions to those forces. Then there's Albert Einstein, who, as you may know, is famous for his work on the laws of physics. He saw the universe as governed by deterministic laws, meaning everything happens in accordance with these natural laws. Einstein even questioned the role of free will in this kind of universe. If everything is determined, could free will be just an illusion? Is our sense of making choices just a byproduct of this deterministic world we live in? So my child, when you think about determinism, it can make you wonder, if everything is determined, can we really blame anyone for their actions? Are we just following a script written by the universe? It's a difficult question, and one that doesn't have a clear answer. But that's the beauty of philosophy. It challenges us to think deeply about these ideas and try to make sense of them. Just remember, whether it's free will or determinism, both are part of the puzzle of what it means to be human. My child, now we've covered two sides of a very complex debate: free will and determinism. But there's one more perspective I want to share with you, one that tries to bring them together. It's called compatibilism. Compatibilism is the idea that free will and determinism don't have to be enemies. In fact, some philosophers believe that they can coexist. They argue that even if our actions are influenced by external factors, things like our upbringing, our environment, or past experiences, we still have the ability to make choices based on our desires, motivations, and the way we think. David Hume, one of the greatest thinkers in philosophy, proposed that free will is compatible with determinism as long as individuals can act according to their desires without facing external constraints. What Hume means is that even if there are external forces at play in our lives, we still have the freedom to act based on what we truly want or believe. It's about being able to follow your own desires without being forced or coerced into doing something against your will. Let's say you're in the kitchen and you're deciding whether to make a cup of tea or coffee. You might feel like you really want tea, and that's because you've had a long day and it feels comforting to you. Maybe there's a specific brand of tea you love, and it reminds you of a peaceful moment you had with a close friend. Now, Hume would argue that you still have free will because you're acting based on your desires. You're not being forced to choose one over the other. Your choice is determined by your personal preferences, your desire for comfort, your fondness for that tea. Even though those desires might have been influenced by your past experiences, they still represent your free choice in the present. However, let's imagine that there's a huge storm outside, and the only thing you can do is stay in the house. The storm has affected your mood, and now you're leaning towards making coffee instead, because it's energizing and helps you feel like you're taking control of your situation. Again, your choice is still influenced by an external factor, the weather, but it's still based on your own desires and how you feel. Hume would say that this is how free will works in a deterministic world. You are making choices, but those choices are shaped by your desires, experiences, and external circumstances. You're still free to act based on what you want in the moment. You may be influenced by what's going on around you, but ultimately, your decision is yours to make. So my child, it's not that you're being controlled by external forces, it's more about how those forces help shape your decisions. And as long as you're able to act according to your own desires, without external constraints or coercion, you're exercising free will. Then there's Daniel Dennett, a contemporary philosopher who took this idea a bit further. He suggested that free will is a form of self-determined action, even if it's influenced by our past experiences or external factors. Dennett believed that while we are shaped by the world around us, we still have the power to make decisions that reflect who we are. He described free will as a kind of self-determined action, where we act according to our own reasoning and values, even though those decisions are often influenced by everything that came before. Imagine you're preparing for an important test. You've studied for weeks, but you're still feeling unsure. As you sit down to study, you find yourself looking at your phone. It's tempting to scroll through social media instead of focusing on the material you've learned. Now, Dennett would say that even though there are influences around you, like your phone, the people you follow, and the pressure you might feel, your ability to choose whether to study or check your phone is still a form of free will. Here's the twist. Dennett believes that your free will comes from your ability to act according to your reasoning, even when influenced by external factors. In this case, maybe you feel the pull to procrastinate, but you also know that if you keep studying, you'll do better on the test. Your choice to turn off your phone and focus is still free will in action because you're using your reasoning to make a decision that aligns with your long-term goals and values. The external influence, the temptation to scroll through your phone, is there, but you have the power to choose whether to follow it or not. Dennett would argue that free will doesn't mean you make decisions without any external influence. Instead, it's about the ability to make choices based on your personal motivations, experiences, and rational thinking, even if those are shaped by the past and the world around you. It's your ability to reflect on the consequences of your actions and make a choice that aligns with who you are. So, my child, in Dennett's view, your free will is like a form of self-determined action. The influences and circumstances are part of the picture, but you are still in control of the decisions you make, based on your desires and your understanding of the world. How does that feel? Do you see how your ability to make thoughtful decisions fits into Dennett's idea of free will? My child, let's dive into hard determinism. It's the view that free will, as we think of it, is actually an illusion. Everything we do is determined by prior causes, events that have happened before us, shaping who we are and what we choose. Imagine you're walking down the street and you suddenly feel an urge to help someone who dropped their groceries. Now, hard determinism would say that your choice to help isn't really free. It's actually shaped by a variety of factors: your past experiences, your upbringing, maybe even your genetic predisposition to be kind or empathetic. The urge to help was a result of things that came before that moment, making it feel like a choice. But in reality, it was determined by everything that happened in your life up until that point. B.F. Skinner, a psychologist, argued that human behavior is shaped by environmental stimuli, what happens around us, and how we've been conditioned in the past. So, when you make a decision, like helping someone or choosing not to, it's all influenced by your environment and your past experiences. You're acting based on patterns, not from a place of true, independent freedom. Then there's Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher who believed that our decisions are driven by unconscious forces, things we aren't even aware of. According to Schopenhauer, all of our desires and choices are rooted in deep, often unconscious drives. If you're choosing to help someone, it might be because of some hidden motivation in your subconscious. Perhaps a sense of guilt, compassion, or a desire for approval. But true freedom, according to Schopenhauer, isn't possible because our decisions are always influenced by forces we can't control. Now, this doesn't mean we're robots or that we're just puppets of the world around us. But what it suggests is that the concept of freedom of choice is far more complicated than we realize. We might think we're making decisions independently, but in reality, they are the result of prior events and factors, some of which we aren't even aware of. So, my child, when we look at the world through the lens of hard determinism, the idea of free will starts to blur. What we think of as freedom might just be a complex web of influences, both conscious and unconscious, that guide our actions. Does that sound a bit daunting? What do you think? Do you feel like your choices are really free? Or do you think there might be unseen forces at play? My child, if you believe in free will, you also have to believe that you're responsible for what you do. That means you're morally accountable for your choices. If you do something good, you get the credit. And if you do something bad, the responsibility falls on you. That's a lot to carry, right? But it's also empowering. It gives us control, and with that control comes the ability to shape our lives. But what if determinism is true? If everything is just a chain of events beyond our control, then the concept of moral responsibility starts to get tricky. How can we say someone is morally responsible for an action if they had no real control over it? Imagine you hurt someone, but you later realize it was a result of something that happened in your past, like how you were raised, or the stressful day you had. Does that mean you're not responsible for the harm you caused? It's a hard question, and one that challenges our entire understanding of right and wrong. Now, my child, I want you to take a step back and think about our society's legal and social systems. They are built on the idea that people have free will. When someone commits a crime, they are judged, punished, or forgiven based on the choices they made. But what if determinism is true? Does that make the punishment unfair? If a person's actions were determined by factors beyond their control, can we really blame them the same way we do now? This is where the idea of fairness comes into play. If someone's behavior is shaped by their environment or their genetics, are we being just in holding them accountable the same way as someone who is fully in control of their choices? And then there's the existential aspect. The belief in free will gives us power. It makes us feel like we can change our lives, that we have the ability to choose our path. You can decide what kind of person you want to be and how you want your story to unfold. On the flip side, determinism might make you feel powerless. If everything is determined for you, then where's the point in trying? It can lead to a feeling of acceptance, just going along with the flow of life, no longer stressing about making wrong choices, but also losing that drive to change or take action. So, my child, it's an interesting thought, isn't it? Free will gives us responsibility, but also freedom. Determinism takes away some of that power, but may offer a sense of peace, knowing that some things are just beyond our control. My child, now let's talk about what modern science says about all of this. You might be wondering, how does neuroscience fit into the picture? Well, there's some fascinating research out there that suggests a lot of our decisions are actually made before we're even consciously aware of them. That's right. Our brain makes choices long before we feel like we've decided on something. Think of it like this. When you choose to eat something, your brain has already been processing the decision before you even realize it. This challenges the very idea that we have full control over our actions, because it seems like we don't even know when we're making the decision. This idea is one that Sam Harris, a well-known philosopher and neuroscientist, talks about a lot. He argues that if our brain is making decisions unconsciously, then what does that say about free will? Are we really in charge, or is it just our brain working behind the scenes without us noticing? It's a little unsettling, isn't it? To think that the choices we make might not be as ours as we thought. And then there's Richard Dawkins, another prominent thinker. He believes that our actions are heavily influenced by our genes and evolutionary history. He suggests that everything we do is shaped by forces beyond our immediate control. You might think you're making a choice because you want something, but in reality, your genes and biology are pulling the strings. It's like being a puppet with invisible strings. Our desires and behaviors are rooted deep in our genetic makeup, in the past, and even in the survival instincts we don't even realize we have. So, my child, what do you think about all of this? The idea that we might not be as free as we think, that our choices, from what we eat to the paths we choose in life, might be influenced by things we can't even see or control? It makes you wonder, if free will is just an illusion, how much of our lives are really ours to shape? My child, now we arrive at something that I find quite fascinating: how we balance free will and determinism in our everyday lives. You see, while some of what we do may be determined by factors beyond our control, like our upbringing, society, or even biology, we still act as though we have free will. We make choices every day, even though some philosophers argue that our actions are influenced by things we don't fully understand or even notice. Now take a moment to think about it. When you wake up in the morning and decide what to wear, or when you choose what to eat for lunch, it feels like a decision you've made, and in a way, it is your choice. But there might be factors you aren't aware of, like your mood, the weather, or the habits you've developed over time, that shape those decisions. It's a mix, isn't it? We operate as though we have complete freedom to choose, but maybe, just maybe, those choices are guided by an invisible hand. Philosophers often talk about this too. They say that even though some of our actions might be influenced by past events or natural laws, we still feel a sense of agency. That feeling, the experience of making a choice, is important. It shapes who we are and how we grow as individuals. It's like a paradox. We may not have total control, but we still need to feel like we do. This feeling of choice is crucial for taking responsibility for our actions, for striving to improve ourselves, and for understanding our place in the world. So my child, even if everything might be determined in some way, remember that the act of making choices is still part of how we live. It's what helps us grow, learn from our mistakes, and move forward. It's not always about what's ultimately decided for you, but about how you respond, how you shape yourselves, and how you take responsibility for the path you walk. My child, let me share something from my heart. Do you know why I'm recording this voice note for you? Why I take the time to tell you these stories and talk about philosophy? It's because I want to give you something more than just advice or guidance. I want to help you become wise. Not just smart, not just capable, but truly wise. Wisdom will guide you when life becomes unclear, when choices seem heavy, and when the world feels unpredictable. I still remember the moment you were born. The way you looked at the world, so small yet so full of potential. My heart was overwhelmed with joy, and at the same time, I was struck by this deep sense of responsibility. I thought to myself, will my child be okay? Will they grow up to be strong, kind, and wise enough to handle this life? And how I wished I could shield you from every hardship, every disappointment, every hurt. But life doesn't work that way, my child. It's not always what we expect. Plans unravel, dreams sometimes fall apart, and paths twist in ways we never imagined. That's why I tell you these things. Philosophy, these stories, they aren't just lessons, they're tools. Tools to help you navigate the uncertainties of life. They're a compass when you feel lost, a reminder that even when things go wrong, you have the strength to endure and the capacity to grow. Seeing you become the person you are now, I can't describe how proud I feel. But the world can be unpredictable, and my greatest wish is for you to face it, not just with courage, but with wisdom. Wisdom to know when to hold on and when to let go, when to fight and when to adapt, and above all, wisdom to always stay true to yourself. So my dear child, as I share these thoughts and stories with you, remember they come from a place of love. They're my way of preparing you for the twists and turns of life, so that no matter where you find yourself, you'll carry a part of me with you. A voice reminding you that you are strong, capable, and deeply loved. My child, next I want to talk to you about a powerful idea from a man named Friedrich Nietzsche. He believed there is something deep within all of us, a force, a drive, that pushes us forward in life. He called it the will to power. Now this isn't about just surviving, like how we need food, water, or shelter. No, it's something much greater than that. The will to power is the desire to grow, to thrive, to rise beyond what we are today. It's the spark that pushes a painter to create a masterpiece or a scientist to uncover a new discovery. It's the same force that makes you want to achieve something you're proud of, whether it's in school, with your friends, or even in something as simple as solving a difficult problem. This force isn't just about control or dominance over others. No, Nietzsche's idea is deeper than that. It's about expressing your unique self, finding your own path, and realizing the potential that lies within you. Think of it as a kind of inner compass, guiding you not just to survive, but to thrive, to create, and to leave your mark on this world. It's like a plant growing towards the sun, no matter how rocky the soil might be. It's not enough for the plant to merely exist. It strives to bloom, to stand tall, to reach its fullest potential. That's what Nietzsche meant by the will to power. It's the life force that pushes us to become more than what we are today. Do you feel it too, my child? That little voice inside of you that says, I can do more, I can be more? That's your will to power, urging you to embrace life not just as it is, but as something you can shape into something extraordinary. Would you like to explore more about how this force works in our lives? Or should I let you rest for a bit first? My child, life is not just about walking a straight path. It's full of hills to climb, storms to face, and sometimes even battles within ourselves. Nietzsche had a way of looking at this struggle. He believed that our challenges, our struggles, are what shape us into something greater. He called it self-overcoming. It's the idea that we're not bound by our weaknesses or past failures. Instead, we can rise above them, shaping ourselves into something stronger, wiser, and truer to who we're meant to be. He believed that becoming the best version of ourselves is life's greatest mission. Nietzsche even had a word for this goal, the Ubermensch. It's not about being perfect or superior to others. It's about striving to be superior to who you were yesterday. Think about the times when you faced something hard, an exam, a tough decision, or even a moment when you doubted yourself. And yet, you found a way through, didn't you? That's self-overcoming. That's your will to power in action. But it doesn't stop there. Nietzsche also spoke about creativity and expression as part of this journey. The will to power isn't just about enduring. It's about creating something meaningful from the life we're given. It could be as simple as drawing a picture, writing a story, or finding a new way to solve a problem. Every time you express yourself, every time you turn an idea into reality, you're leaving a mark that says, I was here. I lived. I created. Life, my child, isn't meant to be stagnant. It's meant to be a canvas, and you are the artist. The question is, what kind of masterpiece will you create? Even when it feels hard, even when the world seems heavy, remember that each step forward is a step toward becoming the best version of yourself. And no matter what, I'll always believe in the greatness you carry within you. You're stronger than you know, more capable than you realize. My child, relationships, whether they're with friends, family, or the world at large, are a stage where the will to power often plays out. Nietzsche believed that in every interaction, there's a subtle current of influence flowing beneath the surface. Sometimes it's an unconscious push to lead, to be heard, or to shape the thoughts and actions of others. You might have noticed it in small ways, maybe during a group project when someone insists on having their idea take center stage, or even in arguments where each person tries to have the last word. Nietzsche saw this as a natural part of human nature, our desire to assert ourselves, to matter in the world. But here's something profound he pointed out. True power isn't found in dominating others. It's not about making someone bend to your will or forcing your way forward. True power, he believed, comes from mastering oneself. It's about rising above the chaos and noise of external circumstances, staying grounded in who you are, and letting that strength guide your actions. Think about it, my child. When someone loses their temper or tries to manipulate a situation, does it really make them strong, or does it reveal their insecurities? On the other hand, someone who listens patiently, who acts with kindness and integrity, even when it's hard, that person shows a strength that doesn't need to shout to be heard. In every relationship, you'll face moments where you have to choose. Will you assert control, or will you rise above and act from a place of wisdom and inner strength? Mastery of oneself doesn't mean ignoring others or their needs. It means leading by example, being steady, and choosing responses that build trust and respect. You don't have to prove your worth by overpowering others. Your value shines in the way you treat people, the way you inspire them, and the way you stand firm in your principles. That's what true power looks like. A quiet confidence that can't be shaken by the noise of the world. Remember, my child, relationships are not about winning or losing. They're about connection, growth, and understanding. And the strongest connections come from a place of mutual respect, where no one seeks to overpower, but everyone strives to grow together. My child, the world often teaches us what is good and bad from a young age, wrapping these lessons in the fabric of tradition, religion, and societal expectations. But Nietzsche saw something troubling in these teachings, something he called slave morality. Slave morality, as Nietzsche described it, is born from weakness. It emerges in those who feel powerless, who cannot assert themselves, and so they create values that glorify humility, obedience, and conformity. It praises virtues like meekness and self-denial, not because they are inherently noble, but because they serve as a defense against the strength and ambition of others. In contrast, Nietzsche introduced the idea of master morality. This is the morality of those who embrace life fully, who act with boldness and self-assurance. It values strength, individuality, and ambition, the courage to create one's own path and take responsibility for it. Master morality doesn't ask, what does society expect of me, but rather, what do I expect of myself? Now, my child, here is where Nietzsche's brilliance shines brightest. He challenges us to question these moral systems, to ask ourselves whether the values we follow truly serve us, or whether they merely hold us back. He calls this process the revaluation of values. It's not about rejecting all morality, but about deeply examining the source of our beliefs. Are they rooted in fear, or are they born from strength? Imagine a bird, raised among creatures that fear the sky. They teach it to stay grounded, to believe that flying is dangerous, even unnatural. That bird might grow up believing its wings are a burden, something to hide or suppress. But what if, one day, it looked to the sky and felt the pull of the wind? What if it realized that it was meant to soar, not because others approved, but because it was its nature? Nietzsche's critique is an invitation for you to look at the sky, to question the values handed down to you, and to decide for yourself what kind of person you wish to be. He doesn't ask us to reject humility or kindness, but to embrace them consciously, not as rules imposed by others, but as choices aligned with our strength and vision. So, as you move through life, my child, don't be afraid to question what you've been taught. Don't let fear or conformity clip your wings. Embrace the courage to reimagine what it means to be good, to be strong, and to live a life true to your essence. That is where true freedom begins. So, as you face your own journey, remember this. Growth isn't about avoiding pain or failure, it's about learning from them, using them as fuel. And freedom isn't about controlling everything around you, it's about freeing yourself from resentment, choosing to live boldly, even in the face of uncertainty. Life, my child, is not a thing to be endured, it's a thing to be lived. And the will to power? It's your reminder that you have within you the strength to create, to overcome, and to become the person you're meant to be. My child, as we've explored the will to power, we've uncovered its immense potential, not just for personal growth, but for shaping how we see the world. Yet, in striving for greatness and understanding life's challenges, we inevitably encounter one of humanity's oldest and most profound questions: the nature of evil. Evil. It's a word that carries weight, fear, and mystery. What is it really? Is it something external, a force that exists beyond us? Or is it a reflection of something deeper within our nature? These are questions philosophers have wrestled with for centuries. Nietzsche himself didn't shy away from this. He challenged traditional ideas of good and evil, urging us to see beyond simplistic labels. To him, what we often call evil might simply be the misunderstood expression of power, of life asserting itself in ways that defy conventional morality. But this isn't a question for Nietzsche alone. It touches on theology, ethics, and even the way we experience suffering in our own lives. What does evil mean for us as individuals? Why does it exist, and what can it teach us about ourselves and the world? I want to take you on this exploration, my child, not to answer these questions for you, but to guide you through the landscapes of thought that have shaped how humanity understands evil. Together, we'll look at how philosophers, theologians, and even science have grappled with this mystery. Because in understanding evil, we're not just looking at the darkness in the world, we're discovering the light that helps us overcome it. My child, when we try to understand why evil exists, people have come up with different ways to explain it. One of these ways is called theodicy. This is a fancy word that means trying to justify the existence of evil, especially when we believe in a higher power that is good and benevolent. It's that age-old question: if there's a good God, why does evil exist? It's a tough question, and many philosophers and theologians have tried to answer it in various ways. Some argue that evil exists because it's part of the free will that we're given. If we were all just good, perfect beings, then we wouldn't really have the ability to make choices, would we? And without choice, there wouldn't be real goodness either. In other words, for goodness to be meaningful, there has to be the possibility of evil. It's a hard idea to swallow, but some say that it's the price we pay for the gift of free will. Then there's a distinction between two types of evil. One is called moral evil. This is the kind of evil that comes from people. It's the harm we cause to each other, things like wars, hatred, oppression, or cruelty. It's when people make choices that bring pain to others. The other kind of evil is called natural evil, and this is the suffering that comes from nature itself. Think about natural disasters like earthquakes, hurricanes, or diseases. These events cause harm, but they're not the result of human choices. The question is, if these things are beyond our control, why do they exist in the first place? Both moral and natural evils challenge the idea of a perfect world. They force us to think deeper about why suffering is a part of life. And as we reflect on it, we realize that we may never have a perfect answer. But understanding that there are different kinds of evil helps us approach life with a bit more empathy for others and for ourselves. My child, let's now look at how different religions understand evil. Each tradition brings its own perspective, trying to make sense of the suffering we face in the world. Take Christianity, for example. In Christian belief, evil is often seen as a consequence of human free will. Remember the story of Adam and Eve? When they chose to disobey God, they brought sin and suffering into the world. It's believed that this original sin affects everyone and that evil is a part of the human condition. But here's the thing. Christianity also teaches that this is a test of faith. In a way, life is a journey where we are asked to choose between good and evil, and in the process, we are shaped and refined by our choices. Evil, then, isn't just something that happens to us. It's a challenge that calls us to grow, to be better, and to turn toward goodness and faith. Now let's look at Eastern traditions, like Hinduism and Buddhism. They offer a different way of thinking about evil and suffering. In these beliefs, suffering is often seen as the result of karma, the law of cause and effect. The idea is that our actions, both good and bad, create consequences that shape our future. If you do harm, it will come back to you, but if you act with kindness and wisdom, you'll move toward a better life. But there's something else in Eastern thought that's important to understand: the idea of attachment. Both Hinduism and Buddhism teach that suffering comes from being attached to things, whether it's our desires, our identities, or even our expectations of what life should be like. Evil, in this sense, is not just external. It's also something that arises from within us, from our attachments and desires. The path to overcoming evil, then, is through transcendence, letting go of those attachments and seeing beyond the dualities of good and evil. It's about realizing that suffering is a part of life, but it doesn't have to define us. We can move beyond it. So, my child, whether it's through the Christian view of free will and original sin, or through the Eastern focus on karma and attachment, religions offer different answers to the problem of evil. What they share is the idea that we have a role to play in how we respond to the suffering in the world. Now, my child, let's dive into how Nietzsche, the philosopher we've talked about, views evil. This might be a bit different from what we've heard before. Nietzsche, in his book Beyond Good and Evil, challenges the usual way we think about good and evil. You see, most people believe there's a clear line between the two. What's good is always good, and what's evil is always bad. But Nietzsche disagrees with this simple view. He argues that these concepts of good and evil are not universal truths. Instead, they're shaped by society, by those in power. In other words, what we call evil is often just a label given to things that challenge the status quo, things that disrupt the established order. Nietzsche believed that much of what society labels as evil is really just something that threatens the power structures that keep people controlled. Think about how people who challenge traditional systems, like revolutionary thinkers or artists, are often seen as evil or dangerous at first. In Nietzsche's eyes, these individuals are not evil at all. Instead, they are forces of change, of creative destruction. Now, what do I mean by creative destruction? Well, sometimes in life, things need to be broken down before they can be built up again. When we challenge old ways of thinking or living, it might feel uncomfortable or even evil to some. But this destruction can make room for new possibilities. Imagine a company that has been doing things the same way for decades, even though those methods are outdated. A new leader comes in, someone with fresh ideas, and they start changing things. Introducing new technology, restructuring how things are done. At first, some employees might resist. They might label this change as disruptive or even evil because it's breaking away from tradition. But over time, that change leads to growth, innovation, and better results. The destruction of the old ways wasn't bad. It was the force of progress and creativity. So, evil, according to Nietzsche, is not a simple moral judgment. It's often a matter of perspective, shaped by the structures of power in society. What's labeled as evil may actually be the force needed to break free from outdated ideas, to create something new and better for humanity. You know, my child, when you were little, there were moments that might have seemed, well, mischievous, or even a bit, let's say, evil, on the surface. Like the time you drew all over the walls with crayons. To anyone else, it might have looked like you were being defiant or destructive. But to me, it wasn't evil at all. I saw it differently. I saw your curiosity, your need to explore and express yourself. Those scribbles weren't just random marks. They were your first attempts to create something, to leave your mark on the world. Quite literally. Sure, it took me hours to clean it up, but it also made me smile because it showed your spirit. And then there was that time you snuck into the kitchen and ate all the cookies before dinner. I remember finding you with crumbs all over your face, denying it with such determination. Some might have said you were being naughty, but to me, you were just discovering temptation and testing boundaries. It wasn't about being bad, it was about learning what you could and couldn't do. These little acts that might have looked like mischief were never evil to me. They were you figuring out the world, your place in it, and how far you could push things. And you know what? That's part of growing. Even now, when you make mistakes or push boundaries, I don't see evil. I see a person learning, questioning, and striving to understand life. So whenever you think about what makes something evil, remember this. Sometimes what seems wrong or destructive is just a sign of growth or curiosity. And as your father, I'll always try to see beyond the surface, to understand the heart of what you're doing, just like I did when you were that little, mischievous artist with a box of crayons. My child, as we continue our journey through the nature of evil. You see, thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus had a unique way of looking at suffering and evil, especially in relation to human freedom. They didn't see evil as something that exists outside of us, as an external force or a demon lurking in the shadows. Instead, they saw it as something very much connected to human freedom and the choices we make in an often absurd world. Sartre believed in radical freedom, that we are free to choose, even in the face of suffering. But that freedom comes with a heavy responsibility. We aren't just free to do what we want, we are also responsible for the consequences of our actions. In this sense, evil can be seen as a result of the choices people make when they refuse to take responsibility for their freedom. When we act in bad faith, when we deny our ability to choose or avoid responsibility, we can end up causing harm, even to ourselves. Sartre would say that evil stems from this denial of our own humanity, from refusing to face the existential reality of our freedom. Camus, on the other hand, looked at the absurdity of life, how we often struggle against a world that doesn't seem to offer us any clear meaning. For him, suffering is a part of the human experience. And even though life is absurd, we can still find meaning in it by embracing that absurdity and choosing to live fully. Evil, for Camus, might arise from how we react to that absurdity, whether we give in to despair or whether we choose to live with integrity, despite the lack of inherent meaning in the world. The way we respond to suffering and injustice determines whether we perpetuate evil or find ways to rise above it. On the other hand, humanistic psychology provides another lens. It suggests that evil might not come from some inherent wickedness in people, but from unmet needs, trauma, or flawed systems. Think about it. When a person grows up in an environment filled with neglect or abuse, it can shape their worldview and behavior in ways that might seem evil to others. It's not that they're born with evil in them, But their experiences, the lack of love, care, or the absence of security can lead them down a path of harm. When basic human needs aren't met, people might turn to destructive behaviors, either to cope or to regain control over their lives. So evil, from this perspective, isn't just about bad people doing bad things. It's about the conditions in which people live and the choices they make or feel they have to make in response to those conditions. It's a more compassionate way of looking at the world, understanding that even those who commit evil acts may have been shaped by circumstances far beyond their control. The existentialists and humanists challenge us to see evil as a product of our own choices and the way society shapes us. And while they don't excuse harmful actions, they invite us to understand them more deeply. And maybe, just maybe, we can learn to prevent them by changing the way we live and treat others. Ah, my child, I've been talking for quite a while now, haven't I? Maybe I've gone on too long and you've already drifted off to sleep. That's okay, your rest is important, and perhaps these words can wait until morning. But I know you. Even if you didn't hear everything tonight, you'll come back to this. You'll listen to what I've said, maybe over breakfast or on your way to start the day. That's the kind of person you are. Always seeking, always curious. So sleep well, my child. Let these words settle, even if only in the background of your dreams. And when you wake, this voice note of mine will still be here, waiting for you, just like I always will. But just in case you're still awake, my child, then let's continue. Tonight feels like one of those nights where thoughts flow freely, and maybe they're meant to reach you in this quiet moment. So, let me share with you about something truly profound, the philosophy of empathy. Empathy is not just about feeling sorry for someone or understanding their pain. It's deeper than that. It's about being willing to step into someone else's world, even for a brief moment, to see life as they do. It's like sharing their vision, their struggles, and their joys, as if they're your own. When you were little, I saw glimpses of this in you. Do you remember that time you found that injured bird in the yard? You were so small, yet you insisted on taking care of it. You built it a little nest from your toys, and though it didn't survive, you cried for it like it was your best friend. That was empathy, my child. Even at such a young age, you recognized that another living being was hurting, and you wanted to make it better. Empathy helps us see beyond ourselves. It teaches us that everyone we meet carries their own battles, fears, dreams, losses, hidden beneath the surface. And sometimes those battles make people act in ways we don't understand. They might seem angry, distant, or even cruel, but often that's just their pain speaking. Empathy allows us to see past that, to see the human being behind the mask. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everyone or accept everything they do. Empathy doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. It gives you the strength to respond to life not with judgment, but with understanding. And that understanding, my child, can build bridges where others see walls. As you grow older, you'll face moments when you'll wonder why people act a certain way or why the world feels so unkind. In those moments, I hope you'll remember this. Empathy doesn't solve all problems, but it softens the edges. It helps you find connection in a disconnected world. And most importantly, it helps you understand yourself. Why you feel what you feel, why you react the way you do, and how to grow from those experiences. Empathy teaches us that being human means embracing both our own struggles and the struggles of others. My child, let me tell you about the different ways we connect with others through empathy. It's not just about feeling for someone, but understanding and responding in ways that matter. First, there's affective empathy. This is when you actually feel what someone else is feeling, as though their emotions flow directly into you. Do you remember when you were little and saw your friend crying because they'd dropped their ice cream? You cried too, even though your ice cream was still safe in your hand. That's affective empathy. Your heart feels their sadness, even if it's not your own. But it can be exhausting if we carry too much of other people's emotions without knowing how to let go. Then there's cognitive empathy. This isn't about feeling someone's emotions, but understanding their perspective, seeing the world through their eyes. Think about when you've seen someone frustrated or angry, and instead of feeling upset yourself, you tried to figure out why they were upset. It's like putting together a puzzle of their thoughts and feelings. Cognitive empathy is like a bridge. It connects you without pulling you into their emotional storm. And finally, there's compassionate empathy, which is the most complete form. It's when you feel for someone, understand their situation, and are moved to help. Like that time you noticed I looked tired, and you made me a cup of tea without me asking. That's compassionate empathy, action born from care. Each type of empathy has its role, and together they make us human. They remind us that we don't live in isolation, but are connected to one another in countless ways. The world can feel harsh at times, but empathy is what softens it, what makes us capable of love and understanding. My child, David Hume, believed that empathy, or what he called sympathy, is part of our nature. He saw it as the glue that holds society together, helping us make moral choices by feeling connected to others. Imagine this: when you share someone's joy or pain, you're not just being kind, you're part of what makes the world a better place. Then there's Edith Stein, who took empathy even deeper. She said it's how we truly understand what someone else is going through, not just their words or actions, but their inner world, their feelings and struggles. It's like when you listen to a close friend and feel as if you can almost step into their shoes for a moment. Stein believed this understanding is what makes real relationships and ethics possible. And Martin Buber, he spoke of empathy in the context of the I-thou relationship. In his view, when we see someone not as an object or a role, but as a whole, unique person, we form a connection that's genuine and respectful. It's like when you and I talk, and I see you not just as my child, but as a person with your own thoughts, dreams, and feelings. That's what Buber meant by true interaction. These ideas remind us that empathy isn't just about being nice. Now you know about what is the definition of empathy, my child. So what is the role of empathy in human connection? When it comes to building relationships, empathy is like the foundation of a strong house. It helps us trust, understand, and feel close to others. Think about your best friends. What makes those connections special? Isn't it that sense of being heard and understood, of knowing they care about you as much as you care about them? That's empathy at work. And in times of conflict, empathy becomes even more important. Imagine two people arguing, each stuck in their own perspective. But then, one of them stops, listens, and tries to understand the other side. Suddenly, the tension softens and a solution feels possible. That's the magic of empathy. It helps us find common ground when everything seems divided. Empathy also sparks compassion. It's what drives us to act when someone is struggling. Remember when you saw someone upset and you felt a pull to help? That's empathy turning into action, lending a hand, offering a kind word, or simply being there. Those moments, as small as they seem, can make a world of difference to someone else. So, my child, empathy is more than just understanding how others feel. It's about building bridges, mending rifts, and lifting each other up. My child, empathy is a beautiful gift, but it's not without its challenges. You see, even the most well-meaning things in life have their struggles. Let me explain. First, there's something called emotional fatigue. It's what happens when we feel so deeply for others that it starts to weigh us down. You know how tiring it can be to carry a heavy backpack for too long? Over-identifying with someone's suffering can feel like that. If you don't take a moment to set the bag down, you might end up too tired to help at all. Imagine this. One of your friends comes to you with a heavy heart, sharing a story about something painful they've been through. Maybe they're upset about a fight at home or feeling lost about what to do next in their life. You listen, and because you care, you feel their pain like it's your own. That's effective empathy. It's your heart responding to their hurt. But as you carry their emotions with you, it starts to feel heavy, doesn't it? You might begin to feel drained, even though you're only trying to help. That's emotional fatigue creeping in. Then there's the question of bias and boundaries. Empathy isn't always evenly distributed. We might find it easier to connect with those who think, look, or act like us. But what about those who are different? That's where empathy gets tricky. It requires effort to step beyond our comfort zones and truly see others for who they are. And then there's the challenge of misplaced empathy. Imagine you're so focused on trying to solve their problem that you neglect your own needs or responsibilities. Maybe you spend hours worrying about them, but in the end, you realize there's little you can actually do. It's a reminder to balance your care, to help where you can, but know your limits. The key, my child, is to listen deeply, to show you care, but also to remember that their journey is their own. You can walk beside them for a while, but you don't have to carry them. Empathy, at its best, is about being present, not overwhelmed. And even when it's hard, it's worth it, because in those moments you remind someone they're not alone. My child, in this fast-changing world, empathy isn't just an ancient virtue, it's also a subject of modern study and discussion. Science and society have found new ways to understand and apply it. Let me tell you a little about that. Neuroscientists have discovered something fascinating. Our brains are wired for empathy. There are parts of our mind, like the mirror neuron system, that light up when we see someone else experiencing something. It's almost as if, in a small way, we live through their experiences with them. That's why, when you see someone cry, you might feel a lump in your throat, or when someone laughs, you feel a bit lighter too. It's not just magic, it's biology. But then there's technology. You live in an age where you can connect with people from across the world with just a click. You can read about their struggles, their joys, their lives. It's an incredible gift, but it comes with challenges. How real is the empathy we feel through a screen? How do we ensure our connections are meaningful, not just fleeting impressions? It's a question I hope your generation can answer better than mine. And lastly, think about leadership. The world used to believe that strength meant being unyielding and cold. But today, people are realizing that the best leaders are the ones who listen, who care, and who understand. Leaders who use empathy to guide their teams don't just inspire, they build something lasting. Empathy is evolving, my child, just as the world is. But at its heart, it remains the same. A bridge between people, a way to connect and care, no matter the distance or differences. And you, my dear, have the chance to make that bridge stronger in everything you do. Empathy, my child, is a beautiful quality. It's the thread that connects us to one another. Too little empathy, and we risk becoming indifferent to the struggles of others. Too much empathy, and we might lose ourselves entirely in someone else's pain. Think of empathy as a tool that helps you understand the feelings and experiences of others. It's important, but it shouldn't override your authenticity. Empathy can lead you to be more aware of others' needs and struggles, but don't let it cloud your judgment or cause you to lose sight of your own path. My child, let me ask you something important. What does it mean to truly be yourself? To live with authenticity is to align your actions, thoughts, and decisions with who you truly are, not with what others expect of you. It's about embracing freedom, the freedom to make choices that reflect your innermost values and desires, rather than following a path that others set for you. It's not always easy, my child, to tell the difference. There will be times when you'll be pulled in different directions. You'll feel the weight of other people's expectations, and it may seem easier to go along with what they want. But I want you to remember this. Authenticity is not about being perfect or doing what's popular. It's about being honest with yourself. It's about making choices that come from your heart, even when they go against the grain. But, my child, to live authentically doesn't mean rejecting everything society offers. It's not about rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It's about understanding where your personal truth lies amidst all the noise and distractions. It's about finding your authentic self in the demands of the world around you. My child, as you grow older and eventually start your own family someday, you will likely face new challenges in staying true to who you are. You might feel the weight of responsibility to be a good partner, a good parent, and to meet the expectations of those around you. Let me give you an example. Imagine, my child, that you've built a life with someone, a family that you cherish. But let's say over time, you find that your partner, or even your extended family, may have different ideas about what success or happiness looks like. Perhaps there's pressure to follow certain traditions, to live a certain lifestyle, or to pursue career paths that feel more aligned with others' expectations rather than your own dreams and passions. Now, in this moment, you might feel torn. On one hand, there's the desire to honor the family's wishes, to make them proud, and to fit into the mold they envision. But on the other hand, there's the voice inside you that longs to follow your own truth, to do something that might be different, something that truly makes you feel fulfilled. This, my child, is where authenticity meets family life. To be authentic in a family isn't about disregarding the needs and desires of those you love. Instead, it's about creating space for your own voice, your own needs, while still being a partner, a parent, or a member of the family who listens and shares. The challenge lies in balancing your truth with the love and respect you owe to others. You know, my child, there's this philosopher named Søren Kierkegaard. He talked about what he called the leap of faith. It's about making choices that might not always make sense to everyone around you, choices that may even seem risky. But they're your choices. They reflect who you are at the core. You see, Kierkegaard believed that living authentically sometimes requires stepping out into the unknown, into something that might not be understood by others. It's the courage to follow your heart, even if it means challenging what the world expects of you. But my child, there's also a trap that many people fall into. This trap is called bad faith, and it comes from another philosopher. It's Jean-Paul Sartre again. Sartre warned against the dangers of pretending to be something you're not, simply to fit in or make others happy. It's easy to adopt roles, to act like someone you're not, because it feels safer, easier. But living that way isn't truly living. It's like wearing a mask every day, pretending to be something or someone just to avoid the responsibility of being real. You don't want to live in bad faith, my child. You want to live a life that is yours, one that is based on who you truly are. One of the biggest challenges of living authentically today is social pressure. Society has a way of measuring success by external standards. How much money you make, how many followers you have, how perfect your life looks on the outside. And believe me, my child, it's easy to get caught in that trap. We often find ourselves chasing things that aren't even ours, simply because we feel we should. Have you noticed how social media has made this even harder? It's become a place where we show only the highlights of our lives, the perfect photos, the happy moments, the carefully crafted versions of ourselves. But these representations, my child, they are often far from the truth. What you see on social media isn't always what's real. It's a curated image, one that doesn't show the struggles, the mistakes, the moments of doubt. And that's where the problem lies. Social media often promotes a version of success and happiness that can make you feel less than, that somehow your life doesn't measure up. Don't let social media or society define who you are. Let your heart, your values, and your experiences guide you. The only validation that truly matters is the one you give to yourself. Authenticity is not something you choose just once, my child. It's a lifelong journey. As you go through life, you will encounter many moments of it. My child, I realize I may have been talking for quite a while now. It feels like I've wandered through so many ideas: gratitude, free will, and determinism, the will to power, empathy, authenticity. So much so that even I am starting to lose track of what I've said. But I know you've been listening. You always do, with that quiet patience of yours. And even if my thoughts have been a bit scattered, I hope you've been able to pick up the pieces of wisdom I've tried to leave behind. Maybe it's time for me to stop recording this voice note and let these ideas settle in your mind. Yet, I can't shake the feeling that there's still more I want to share with you. My child, I want today's message to be complete, not just a collection of thoughts, but a theme of positivity, growth, and individual wisdom. So before I end, let me add a few more ideas that I think are important for you to know. As I told you before about authenticity, being true to yourself, embracing your freedom, and making choices aligned with your values, it occurs to me that authenticity itself needs something to fuel it. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's not just about knowing who you are, but also about exploring what shapes you, what excites you, and what makes life meaningful. Because, my child, to live authentically, you must first dare to question the world around you, and even within you. And how do you track those authenticity? It's with curiosity. Without curiosity, the path to your true self might remain hidden, obscured by the routines and expectations of life. But when you let curiosity guide you, every question becomes a door to discovery, and every answer draws you closer to understanding the truth, not just the world, but yourself. So, let me share this thought with you about curiosity and why it is one of life's most precious gifts. My child, there is a man whose life was a testament to the power of curiosity, a man named Nikola Tesla. Tesla was one of the greatest inventors the world has ever known, but what set him apart wasn't just his intelligence or his skill. It was his relentless curiosity, his unyielding desire to understand the mysteries of nature and harness them for the betterment of humanity. As a young boy, Tesla would spend hours observing the world around him, fascinated by the natural phenomena others often overlooked. He once watched a cat's fur crackle with static electricity when stroked and wondered, "What is this invisible force?" While others may have dismissed it as a trivial curiosity, Tesla's mind began to ponder the possibilities of harnessing electricity, setting him on a lifelong path of exploration. Tesla's most groundbreaking discoveries often came from his imaginative mind paired with his curious spirit. He believed that every problem had a solution if one dared to look beyond the obvious. When studying alternating current AC, for example, Tesla envisioned the system in his mind long before he built it. He would conduct experiments in his imagination, tweaking and perfecting designs until he was certain they would work. Curiosity didn't just drive him, it became his method of creation. Consider his famous invention of the Tesla coil, which revolutionized the way we transmit and use electrical energy. This invention wasn't born from following conventional paths or adhering to established norms. It came from Tesla's fearless questioning of what if, and his bold experiments that others might have deemed impossible or impractical. His curiosity led him to unlock secrets of wireless energy that were far ahead of his time. But Tesla's curiosity wasn't just about technology. He was curious about the world, the universe, and even the spiritual connections between all living things. He once said, "The desire that guides me in all I do is the desire to harness the forces of nature to the service of mankind." His inventions were not driven by wealth or fame, but by a profound curiosity about how he could improve the lives of others. Let us delve into curiosity offered by the great philosopher's perspective now. Let's begin with Socrates, the father of Western philosophy. He was a man who lived by a simple yet profound principle: to know is to question. His method, the Socratic method, was a dance of inquiry, a relentless series of questions meant to strip away assumptions and dig deeper into the heart of truth. Socrates believed that wisdom began with acknowledging one's ignorance, and curiosity was the guiding light on the path to greater understanding. My child, think of how powerful this, to see a question not as a sign of weakness, but as a door to wisdom. Every time you ask why, you are in a way following Socrates' timeless example. Now, my child, let us turn to Immanuel Kant, who held that curiosity is rooted in a profound sense of wonder. To Kant, curiosity wasn't just about accumulating knowledge. It was about exploring the very limits of what we can understand. He marveled at the mysteries of existence, the stars in the heavens above, and the moral law within us. For Kant, my child, curiosity was a bridge between what we know and the vast unknown that lies beyond. It teaches us humility, reminding us that the quest for understanding is endless, and that the beauty of life often resides in the journey rather than the destination. And then we have Friedrich Nietzsche, who brought a bold and fiery perspective to curiosity. Nietzsche saw it not merely as a tool for acquiring knowledge, but as an expression of what I already told you before, a will to power. He believed that the act of questioning and seeking knowledge was a way for individuals to assert their strength, overcome limitations, and shape their own destiny. For Nietzsche, curiosity wasn't passive. It was an act of creation, a way of forging meaning in a world that often seems indifferent. Curiosity, my child, is lifelong learning. To explore one's feelings, motives, and experiences with curiosity is to embark on a journey toward emotional depth. By asking, "Why do I feel this way?" or "What lies beneath my reactions?" you begin to understand yourself more fully. This self-awareness is a gift. It allows you to navigate relationships with empathy and authenticity. It helps you to grow emotionally, my child, to feel deeply without being overwhelmed by those feelings, and to connect with others on a profound level. Curiosity is a wondrous force, my child, but like a ship navigating uncharted waters, it needs a compass to find its way. That compass is logical thinking and rationality. These tools are not there to stifle your curiosity, but to guide it, to ensure that your journey toward understanding is not aimless, but purposeful. Logical thinking is the art of structuring your thoughts, connecting ideas like links in a chain. It helps you ask the right questions and identify patterns in the chaos of information. For instance, my child, if you are curious about why the stars shine, logical thinking allows you to break the question into smaller, manageable parts. What are stars made of? How do they produce light? By following this method, curiosity transforms into discovery. Rationality, my child, on the other hand, is the practice of aligning your thoughts with reason and evidence. It tempers curiosity with discipline, ensuring that your explorations lead to truth rather than illusion. A curious mind without rationality may wander into speculation, but a rational mind can test those speculations, separating what is possible from what is improbable. It's like sifting through sand to find the hidden gems of knowledge. So, my child, logical thinking and rationality do not limit your curiosity, they elevate it. They provide the scaffolding upon which you can build your understanding of the world. It's like curiosity as the wind that propels your ship, and logic and reason as the rudder that steers it. With these tools, my child, you can navigate even the most complex ideas with clarity and purpose. Yet remember this, my child. While logic and rationality are invaluable, they are not the only tools. The heart and intuition also have their place, especially when exploring questions of meaning, beauty, and emotion. But for the vast landscapes of knowledge and understanding, logical thinking and rationality are faithful companions, helping you transform your curiosity into wisdom. Like I said before, my child, the heart and intuition also have their place. These are the realms of metaphysics, beauty, and emotion, domains that stir the soul and transcend what the mind can fully measure. Here, the heart and intuition take the lead, offering insights that logic might overlook. The heart, my child, is the seat of empathy and connection. When you stand before a breathtaking sunset, logic might explain the science of light scattering, but it is the heart that feels the awe, the sense of being part of something greater. Beauty is not merely understood, it is experienced. The heart, my child, helps you perceive the harmony, the ineffable quality that moves you, even when words fail. In emotions too, the heart reveals truths that reason struggles to articulate. Consider love. How can logic fully capture its depths or its power? The heart perceives what cannot be quantified, the warmth of connection, the ache of longing, the joy of shared moments. This is, my child, is why, when navigating relationships or the arts, the heart becomes an indispensable guide. Next is the intuition. Intuition, my child, is like a whisper from the unknown, a sudden clarity that arises without deliberate reasoning. In the exploration of metaphysical questions about existence, purpose, or the divine, intuition often illuminates paths that logic cannot tread. Philosophers and mystics alike have turned to intuition when confronting the infinite, sensing patterns and meanings beyond the reach of analysis. For instance, my child, when contemplating the nature of the universe, intuition may lead you to wonder if everything is interconnected. Such a thought might inspire logical inquiry, but its origin lies in an intuitive leap, a felt sense of unity. Intuition bridges the gap between what you know and what you sense might be true. Now, my child, this means the heart and intuition should partners with logic. Together, they form a symphony. Logic provides structure, while the heart brings depth, and intuition offers glimpses of the unseen. When you're curious about metaphysics, beauty, or emotion, rely on logic to refine your understanding, but trust the heart and intuition to guide you toward experiences and truths that cannot be dissected or proven. This, my child, will allow you to embrace the full spectrum of human understanding, from the tangible to the transcendent. So, as you journey through curiosity, let your heart and intuition complement your logical mind, for it is in their harmony that you will find the richness of existence. My child, curiosity is a gift, but even the brightest gifts can face shadows in their journey. We live in a time where answers are but a click away. Yet this abundance, my child, often overwhelms more than it enlightens. The internet brims with facts, opinions, and contradictions, creating a paradox of choice. Instead of nurturing curiosity, it can drown into an ocean of distractions. To truly harness curiosity amidst this overload, my child, one must practice discernment. Not every piece of information deserves your attention, and not every question leads to wisdom. It is vital to ask for you, my child, is this inquiry enriching my understanding? Focus on depth, not breadth, and remember that curiosity thrives when guided by intentionality. Curiosity, my child, often beckons us to venture into uncharted territories, challenging norms and venturing beyond comfort zones. Yet, many are reluctant to embrace the unknown. Societal expectations, cultural traditions, and personal insecurities can suppress the urge to explore, convincing you that it is safer to conform than to question. But fear is no ally to growth, my child. The unknown, though intimidating, is where discovery lies. Think of great innovators and thinkers. They faced resistance, yet they persisted. To nurture curiosity in such an environment, courage is required. Be bold enough to ask the difficult questions, even if the answers unsettle or challenge what is familiar. These challenges, my child, remind us that curiosity is not a passive state, but an active pursuit. It requires you vigilance against distractions and courage against fear. Protect your curiosity like a precious flame, shielding it from winds that would extinguish it and feeding it with the kindling of meaningful questions. To live a life rich in curiosity, my child, you must begin with small, deliberate acts. Ask open-ended questions. Instead of you seeking simple answers, ask questions that invite depth. For example, when faced with a challenge, rather than asking, "What went wrong?" ask, "What can I learn from this?" Then seek diverse perspectives. Engage with ideas, people, and experiences that are different from your own. Each perspective, no matter how foreign, can hold a piece of wisdom that deepens your understanding, my child. Embrace uncertainty. View the unknown not as a threat, but as an adventure. Each uncertainty carries the potential for discovery, growth, and the joy of unraveling life's mysteries. So, curiosity, my child, is not just about understanding the external world. It is also the key to unlocking the inner self. By asking, "Why do I feel this way?" or "What truly matters to me?" you begin to unearth the layers of your identity. This self-exploration leads to authenticity, for in knowing your desires and motivations, you learn to live in alignment with your true nature. Curiosity challenges you to confront the comfortable narratives you may have accepted, pushing you to question whether they reflect your own values or those imposed by others. It helps you discern the difference between the roles society asks you to play and the person you truly are. Ah, my child, we've walked through the realms of authenticity and curiosity, two forces that guide us to live truthfully and explore the world with wonder. Authenticity teaches you to honor who we are at our core, to peel away the masks and embrace the true self. Curiosity is a tool that drives you to question, to seek, and to expand your understanding of the world and yourselves. But here's the intriguing part. As I uncover our true selves and explore the mysteries of life, we inevitably encounter something deeper, something hidden, my child. This is the shadow self, a part of us that resides in the corners of our being, where the things we fear, suppress, or deny often linger. You see, my child, authenticity gives you the courage to face these shadows without judgment, while curiosity provides the tools to investigate them with openness and compassion. They prepare you for the journey inward, where the shadow self holds the potential not just for discomfort, but for transformation. Shall we step into this shadowed realm and see what it has to teach us, my child? My child, have you ever wondered about the parts of yourself that you keep hidden, even from your own reflection? Carl Jung called this the shadow self. It's not something dark or evil, it's simply the side of us we choose to ignore. The shadow self is made up of traits, feelings, or desires we've deemed unacceptable. Maybe it's an anger that's too intense, an insecurity you don't want to admit, or even an ambition that feels selfish. These parts get tucked away because we think they don't belong to the version of ourselves we want to present to the world. But just because you hide something doesn't mean it disappears. The shadow lingers in your subconscious, quietly influencing the way you act. It might show up in moments of frustration, in the way you judge others, or in relationships where you keep repeating the same mistakes. Think of the shadow as a locked room within you, my child, filled with pieces of yourself that you've avoided. The longer the door stays closed, the more these parts control you without your awareness. But if you dare to open it, not to judge or fear what you find, but to understand. It can be transformative. So my child, let me give you an example, one that might help you understand how the shadow works. Imagine a boy who always wanted to be kind and generous. He was praised for his politeness, for always helping others. Over time, he learned to believe that anger was bad, that selfishness was wrong. So, every time he felt those emotions, he pushed them deep down, pretending they didn't exist. But one day, his friend broke a promise. The boy felt a surge of anger, but he suppressed it, thinking, "Good boys don't get angry." Over time, this hidden anger built up like a volcano. It made him snap at people without knowing why or feel bitter when others didn't appreciate his kindness. What the boy didn't realize was that his anger wasn't the problem. It was trying to tell him something. It was a part of his shadow, calling for attention. When he finally sat with it, he understood that his anger wasn't wrong. It was showing him he needed better boundaries. He realized it's okay to say no sometimes, that taking care of himself didn't make him selfish, it made him whole. Each of us, my child, carries inner conflicts hidden beneath the surface. Maybe it's a memory we've buried, a fear we won't acknowledge, or a trait we've convinced ourselves doesn't exist. But ignoring these parts doesn't make them disappear. It only gives them more power over us, often in ways you don't realize. My child, the idea of the shadow is not new. It has been explored deeply by philosophers and psychologists who sought to understand the hidden corners of the human soul. Let's begin with Carl Jung. He saw the shadow as a repository for the parts of ourselves we suppress, things society or our own ideals deem undesirable. But my child, Jung also believed the shadow isn't purely negative. Hidden within it is untapped creativity, strength, and wisdom. To ignore the shadow is to remain incomplete, but to integrate it is to take a step toward what he called individuation, becoming whole. Then, my child, there's Friedrich Nietzsche, who spoke boldly about the darker sides of human nature. He challenged us to confront these aspects. Nietzsche believed that grappling with the shadow is a path to growth and greatness. It's like tempering steel. Only through the heat of self-confrontation can we forge a stronger self. And finally, Sigmund Freud, who approached the shadow from a different angle. For him, the shadow was tied to our repressed desires and instincts, the parts of us that society often deems inappropriate. Freud argued that if we ignore these forces, they control us unconsciously, leading to unhealthy behaviors. But by becoming aware of them, we can channel them constructively. Let me give you an example to understanding what Freud meaning my child. Imagine a rabbit in the wild. By nature, it's curious and playful. But if this rabbit lives in a dangerous environment where exploring could lead to harm, it learns to suppress its curiosity to stay safe. Over time, it becomes overly cautious, sticking close to its burrow, even when there's no immediate threat. Freud would say that the rabbit's suppressed curiosity hasn't vanished, it's just been pushed into the shadow. This buried instinct might resurface in small, subtle ways. Maybe the rabbit fidgets or digs nervously. Its curiosity leaking out because it's part of who it truly is. If the rabbit were to confront this suppressed instinct, acknowledging that curiosity is natural and not always dangerous, it could start exploring safely again, rediscovering its playful nature without putting itself at risk. My child, embarking on the journey of shadow work is like stepping into an unknown yet transformative landscape. It requires you a courage, patience, and a gentle heart toward oneself. Let me guide you on how to take the first steps. Begin with reflection and journaling. Sit with your thoughts and allow yourself to ask the deeper questions. Why do I react this way? Or what am I avoiding? Write freely about your emotions, dreams, or patterns you notice in your behavior. Your journal becomes a mirror, reflecting the parts of yourself you might not yet see clearly. What's important is that you write without judgment or restriction. Let the words flow, my child. You might uncover thoughts and feelings that were hidden beneath the surface, things you may have been avoiding. It's not about labeling these thoughts as good or bad, but simply about allowing them to exist and be acknowledged. By writing them down, you begin to see your shadow more clearly. Let's say, for example, you always feel defensive around people in authority, perhaps your boss or a teacher. When you sit down to write, ask yourself, why do I react this way? Is there something from the past that makes you feel this way? Write freely about it. It could be that when you were younger, you didn't feel heard or valued by authority figures, and that pattern has followed you into adulthood. These realizations come slowly, but with each journal entry, you'll understand more about the hidden parts of yourself. Remember, my child, this is not about fixing anything. It's about understanding. Your journal becomes a place of discovery, a tool to uncover the parts of you that are waiting to be seen. And by seeing them, you begin the process of healing and integration. Take it one step at a time, with patience and compassion for yourself. Next, consider seeking therapy or guidance. A trusted guide like a therapist can help you navigate emotions that may feel overwhelming or confusing. They provide a safe space to explore these hidden parts of yourself, offering tools and insights to help you process and grow. Lastly, embrace mindfulness practices. Sit quietly with your thoughts and notice them as they arise. Don't judge or try to push them away. Simply observe, my child. Imagine you are watching clouds drift by, each one carrying a feeling or thought. This practice teaches you to approach your inner world with curiosity and acceptance, rather than fear or resistance. My child, as you begin to explore your shadow self, you may notice some discomfort. The parts of ourselves that we've repressed or hidden often come with difficult emotions or painful truths. But here's the thing. It's through confronting our shadows that we begin to build something truly powerful inside of us. It's resilience. My child, as I sit here while recording this voice note, something weighs heavily on my heart. If I could take away all your pain, if I could spare you from the struggles of life, I would do it in an instant. I would bear every burden for you, face every difficulty in your place, just so you could have an easier, happier life. But the truth is, I can't do that. I can't protect you from every hardship, no matter how much I wish I could. You see, my child, life isn't something I can shield you from. You will face your own challenges, your own moments of darkness, and your own suffering. I know that one day you will walk your own path, make your own decisions, and yes, even start your own family. And while I can always be here for you, ready to offer guidance, my love, and my support, there are some things you have to go through yourself. These are the things that will shape you, mold you into the person you are meant to become. But my child, even though I can't protect you from everything, I can still pray for you. I pray that your path is not too harsh, that the challenges you face are ones you can overcome, and that life brings you a measure of peace and ease. I hope that when you face adversity, you find the strength to rise above it, and that, in the end, your life is filled with good fortune and love. So now let's continue to the philosophy of resilience, a teaching from Viktor Frankl, who believed that even in the most difficult of times, we have the ability to find meaning and strength. Viktor Frankl was a man who lived through the horrors of the Holocaust. He was a psychiatrist, but nothing in his training could prepare him for what he faced. He was taken to a concentration camp, stripped of everything he knew: his home, his family, his dignity. His family was taken from him, and he experienced pain and loss that most of us can hardly comprehend. But through all of that, Viktor Frankl found a way to endure. My child, Frankl learned something profound during his suffering, something that became the core of what I called the philosophy of resilience. It wasn't about avoiding pain or pretending it didn't exist. It was about what we do with the pain. Frankl realized that, even in the most brutal of circumstances, we can choose how we respond to our suffering. It was not the external circumstances, but our inner freedom that gave us the ability to find meaning in life. Frankl survived because he found meaning in his suffering. He focused on the hope that one day he might be free again, and on the relationships he had with others. Even in the camp, he found purpose in helping others through their pain, and in those small moments, he found strength. He believed that if we can find meaning in our struggles, we can endure anything. My child, life is full of moments that may bring pain, frustration, and suffering. We try to avoid them, yet somehow they always find their way into our lives. Now you might ask, how can we find meaning in suffering? Frankl said that meaning can be found in three things: by doing work that matters to you, by loving and being loved, and sometimes by choosing to endure suffering with dignity. So my child, It's not about pretending the pain doesn't exist, but about finding something greater than the pain itself that keeps you moving forward. You know, my child, Frankl realized something crucial. Those who survived weren't necessarily the physically strongest, but they were the ones who found meaning in their suffering. That's what kept them alive, kept them fighting. Those who had a strong reason to endure, whether it was thoughts of loved ones or a purpose greater than themselves. You might ask, what makes meaning so powerful? Well, here's the thing. When we feel we have meaning in life, our body responds in a remarkable way. When we feel hopeless or lost, our bodies react with stress hormones like cortisol, which can make us feel tired and unwell. But when we find a purpose or meaning, our body responds with dopamine and endorphins, the happiness hormones that can strengthen our immune system. I've watched you grow, and I've seen glimpses of your purpose in the way you defend your friends, in how you never give up on your dreams, in your compassion for others. These aren't just personality traits, my child, they're clues to your meaning. Frankl had this fascinating idea. My child, he called paradoxical intention. Fancy words, I know, but here's what it means. Instead of running from what scares you, you turn around and embrace it, maybe even exaggerate it a little. It's like telling your fear, is that all you've got? Let me tell you something I've never shared before. Before my first big presentation at work, years ago, I was terrified. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my notes. Then I remembered Frankl's teaching. You know what I did? I told myself, okay, let's see if I can make my hands shake even more. Let's set a world record for presentation jitters. And you know what happened? The moment I tried to make myself more nervous, the anxiety started to lose its power. It was like I'd taken the weapon right out of fear's hands. This isn't just about presentations or public speaking, my child. It's about all those fears that try to hold us back. When you're afraid of failure, Frankl might suggest saying, well, let's see if I can fail more spectacularly than anyone has ever failed before. There's something liberating about that, isn't it? You see, anxiety feeds on our attempt to escape it. It's like quicksand. The more you struggle against it, the deeper you sink. But when you do the opposite, when you face it with a bit of humor and courage, something magical happens. Next time you feel those butterflies in your stomach, try this. Don't fight them. Instead, welcome them. Say, hello butterflies, want to dance? Make them work for you instead of against you. Turn that nervous energy into excitement. I've watched you grow, and I've seen your courage, even when you didn't recognize it yourself. Remember when you were afraid of swimming? Now you dive right in. This is just another dive, my child. Frankl showed us that we can't always control what makes us anxious, but we can change our relationship with that anxiety. We can turn our fears into our allies, our anxieties into our strengths. My child, you have so many gifts to offer this world. Your creativity, your empathy, your fierce sense of justice. These aren't just qualities to make you successful. They're tools to help you transcend yourself and touch other lives. Frankl believed that we're not meant to be the main character in our own small story. We're meant to be part of a larger narrative. Like how a single star might be beautiful, but it's breathtaking when it's part of a constellation. I watch you sometimes, struggling with the pressure to be more, achieve more, have more. But maybe the key isn't in being more, it's in giving more. Not more things, but more of yourself, your kindness, your talents, your heart. When you mentor your younger teammates, when you stand up for what's right, when you create art that moves others, that's self-transcendence. That's you becoming part of something bigger than yourself. Frankl would say, my child, that happiness isn't something you pursue. It's what happens when you're busy giving yourself to a worthy cause. It's like your shadow. Chase it and it runs away. Forget about it and walk towards something meaningful, and it naturally follows you. Look for the places where your heart breaks for the world. That pain you feel when you see injustice, that urge to help when someone's hurting. Those aren't weaknesses, they're compasses pointing you toward your purpose. Don't be afraid to lose yourself in service of something greater. Like a river flowing into the ocean, you don't lose who you are. You become part of something vast and beautiful. You know, my child, how we've been talking about Frankl and his ideas about finding meaning in life? Well, there's another remarkable thinker I want to share with you, Albert Camus. He looks at life's meaning from a fascinating different angle. Remember how Frankl taught us that we can find meaning even in suffering? Camus takes us on a different journey. He starts by asking a bold question. My child, what if the universe itself doesn't have any inherent meaning? You know, my child, there is a man named Sisyphus. He was cursed by the gods to push a massive boulder up a mountain, only to watch it roll back down every time he reached the top. And he had to do this over and over for eternity. Now, you might think this is a cruel punishment, and in many ways it is. Imagine working so hard for something, only to see it undone repeatedly. It would seem pointless, wouldn't it? What if we imagine Sisyphus happy? You see, even though Sisyphus's task is endless, it's not about the end result. It's about how he faces the struggle. The boulder, the mountain, it all becomes a part of who he is, and he doesn't give up. While Frankl found meaning through purpose, Camus suggests something equally powerful. We can create meaning through rebellion against meaninglessness itself. Think about it this way, my child. Frankl taught us to find meaning in the midst of suffering. Camus teaches us to create meaning in the face of absurdity. It's like they're two different paths up the same mountain. Remember that time you told me about feeling like your daily routines were just pointless? Going to school, doing homework, repeating the cycle? Frankl would say to find the purpose in these actions. Camus would say something different. He'd say, embrace the absurdity and find joy in the very act of rebellion against meaninglessness. You see, while Frankl discovered meaning through serving a greater purpose, Camus found it in the defiant joy of living authentically despite life's apparent meaninglessness. It's like Frankl teaches you to find the light, while Camus teaches you to dance in the darkness. Both of these perspectives are valuable. Sometimes you'll find clear meaning, as Frankl suggests. Other times, you'll need to create your own meaning through embracing life's absurdity, as Camus proposes. It's like having two different lenses to view life through. I think you're ready for Camus now. You've learned from Frankl how to search for meaning. Now let's explore how to create it even when the search seems futile. It's about finding joy in the journey itself, even when the destination isn't clear. My child, life is a peculiar thing. Every morning we wake up, driven by questions about who we are, why we are here, and what it all means. But the truth, as one I told you before, a philosopher named Albert Camus once said, is that the universe does not answer, it remains silent. This silence is what Camus calls the absurd. It is the clash between our deep yearning for meaning and the cold indifference of the world. Imagine it like you staring at the vastness of the stars, my child, hoping to find a message written just for you, only to realize that they simply exist, shining without purpose or intent. But, my child, let me ask you this. Does that mean life has no meaning at all? Or could it be that we are the ones meant to create it? Camus believed that acknowledging this absurdity is not the end of hope. It is the beginning of freedom. He saw it, my child, as an opportunity to rebel, not by escaping into illusions or despair, but by embracing life fully as it is without pretending it must fit a greater cosmic plan. My child, life is like a puzzle where the final picture is missing. This is what Albert Camus called the absurd, the conflict between our need for meaning and the unresponsive, chaotic nature of the world. It is as if we are actors performing on a stage, but there is no audience to watch, no script to follow. So what do we do when faced with this? Camus identified three paths, three ways people respond to the absurd. The first is escape. Some seek refuge in beliefs that promise meaning, religion, ideologies, or dreams of a greater plan. But my child, Camus saw this as turning away from the truth, avoiding the confrontation with life as it is. The second is surrender. Some choose to abandon life altogether, seeing it as meaningless and unbearable. But Camus rejected this too, for he believed that giving up denies the very essence of our existence. And then, my child, there is the third path, rebellion. This is where Camus found his answer. He said, accept the absurd, embrace it. Live fully, love deeply, create joy, even when the universe offers no guarantees. My child, the idea that life has no inherent meaning, well, that was indeed a revolutionary thought when Camus introduced it. You see, for most of human history, people believed that meaning was given to us by gods, by nature, or by the order of the universe itself. To claim otherwise was not just unusual, it was unsettling. Before the rise of modern science, my child, people turned to myths to understand the world. These stories weren't just tales of gods and heroes. They were profound attempts to explain the mysteries of life. Why do the seasons change? Why does the sun rise and set? Mankind wove meaning into these phenomena through myth, creating a tapestry where everything, every star, river, and tree had purpose and connection. And my child, we must not dismiss these myths as mere fiction. They served an essential role. They guided communities, preserved traditions, and even promoted harmony with nature. For example, in many ancient cultures, the idea that rivers or forests were sacred helped protect those ecosystems. People believed that harming them would offend the spirits, ensuring these natural resources were preserved for generations. Now compare that with the scientific worldview, which is indeed young when placed beside the vast timeline of human belief. Science, as you know, has given us tools to uncover the mechanisms of the universe. It has unraveled mysteries that myths only hinted at. How stars are born, how the earth was formed, even how our own bodies work. But in doing so, it has also stripped away some of the enchantment, the deep sense of connection that myths provided. Camus came at a time when science had started to dominate our thinking. The old myths no longer seemed sufficient to explain the complexities of life. And yet, science offered no answers to the most profound question: why are we here? Camus, in a way, rebelled against both perspectives. He didn't believe in the old narratives of inherent meaning, but he also recognized that science alone couldn't satisfy the human need for purpose. But here's the interesting part, my child. Just because science dismisses myths as unscientific doesn't mean they're useless. Myths are about meaning, not mechanisms. They remind us of our place in the grand scheme of things, not as rulers over nature, but as part of it. They invite us to see the sacred in the ordinary, to approach life with reverence. My child, there is also limitations in Camus and Frankl philosophy. Camus' rebellion, his insistence on finding joy in the struggle, might not resonate with everyone. Imagine someone facing unbearable suffering, grief, poverty, or injustice. Telling them to embrace life's absurdity can feel hollow. Sometimes people need a hope that goes beyond simply accepting the struggle. Now, Frankl believed that we find meaning by choosing our attitude in suffering, by loving, or by dedicating ourselves to something greater than ourselves. But his philosophy too has its limits. Frankl's focus on meaning can feel too optimistic for some, as if every situation can be redeemed by finding purpose. Not all suffering leads to meaning, and some wounds never heal. And while his ideas work well on a personal level, they don't always address larger societal issues, like inequality or systemic injustice. What they both show us, my child, is that no single philosophy can fully capture what it means to live. Humans have always wrestled with these questions. That's why we still look to myths, religions, and even science. They're all pieces of the puzzle, helping us make sense of the world. My child, all I had shared to you about all these philosophical ideas, from Frankl's search for meaning to Camus' embrace of the absurd and everything in between. There's a reason I've been sending you these voice notes. You see, these aren't just abstract ideas from old books. They're tools for living, compass points for navigating life's complexities. When I talk about the will to power, I'm hoping you'll find the strength to shape your own destiny. When I talk about free will and determinism, I'm trying to show you the weight and beauty of your choices. These philosophical ideas, they're like seeds I'm planting. Some might bloom now, others might take years to grow. Some might only make sense when you're facing your own struggles, raising your own family, or searching for your own answers. The gratitude I was told you isn't just about saying thank you. It's about seeing the wonder in existence itself. The Stoic wisdom isn't just for managing stress. It's about building an unshakable core that will serve you through life's storms. When I talked about empathy, it wasn't just about being nice. It was about understanding that every human carries their own universe of thoughts and feelings. And when you explored various perspectives on truth and meaning, it wasn't to confuse you. It was to show you that wisdom often lies in embracing complexity. You know, my child, my own father never had these conversations with me. I had to find these insights through trial and error, through pain and confusion. these voice notes, they're my attempt to give you something I wish I'd had. Not answers, but tools for finding your own answers. Someday, you might be sitting with your own child, facing questions about life, purpose, suffering, or joy. These philosophical ideas aren't just for you. They're a legacy you can pass on, adapt, and enrich with your own wisdom. All these concepts, from moral relativism to existential responsibility, from the nature of consciousness to the power of choice, they're like different maps of the same territory, the human experience. I'm giving you multiple maps because no single one tells the whole story. Remember this: philosophy isn't about having all the answers. It's about learning to ask better questions. It's about developing the wisdom to know when to hold firm and when to remain flexible, when to accept and when to resist, when to act and when to reflect. These, my child, aren't just academic exercises or fatherly lectures. They're survival tools, moral compasses, and seeds of wisdom that I hope will grow throughout your life. Use them when you're confused, share them when others are lost, adapt them as you grow wiser. My greatest hope isn't that you'll remember every philosophical concept I've tell you today. It's that these ideas will help you build a life of meaning, make choices you can be proud of, and find your own way to contribute to the great conversation of human thought. This legacy of ideas, it's my gift to you, and through you, to the future. Use it well, question it often, and add your own wisdom to it. That's how knowledge grows, how wisdom deepens, how humanity progresses. And remember this, my child: when someday your ambition's growing, your dreams of making a difference in society, perhaps through politics or leadership positions. And that's beautiful, but it comes with a profound responsibility. When you choose to use moral principles as your ladder to success, whether in politics, business, or any public sphere, understand this: society will measure you with the same moral ruler you use to measure others. And they should. Many have fallen into the trap of using moral narratives as mere tools, catchphrases for campaigns, buzzwords for speeches. They wear ethics like a costume, discarding it when convenient. But my dear child, remember this: the public's memory is long, and their judgment is fierce. I've seen leaders rise quickly using moral arguments, only to fall harder when their actions contradicted their words. The higher you climb using moral principles as your foundation, the more scrutiny your own morality will face. This is why all our philosophical discussions about Frankl's meaning, Camus' authenticity, Stoic integrity, they weren't just theoretical exercises. They need to be the bedrock of your character, not decorative footnotes in your speeches. If you speak about justice, be just in your private dealings. If you champion transparency, live transparently. If you advocate for compassion, practice it even when no one's watching. If you preach about sacrifice, be ready to sacrifice first. Trace your roots, my child. Understand deeply why you believe what you believe. Don't just inherit my moral perspectives or those of your teachers. Question them, challenge them, make them authentically yours through deep understanding and lived experience. When you stand before people speaking about moral values, let your words emerge from the well of your genuine experiences and authentic beliefs. Let them be heavy with the weight of your own struggles and victories in living up to these ideals. The public stage can be intoxicating. Power can be seductive. But remember, true moral leadership isn't about appearing moral, it's about being moral, especially when it costs you something. Your moral philosophy shouldn't be like a suit you wear to impress others. It should be like your skin, inseparable from who you are. When you speak about values, let it be because these values keep you awake at night, not because they poll well in focus groups. Understand this: the moment you use morality as your platform, you invite the world to examine your character with a microscope. And they should. Because moral leadership without moral living is just sophisticated manipulation. So, before you step onto any stage, before you seek any position of power, do this: examine your true motivations. Question your own principles. Test your beliefs against your actions. Know your moral roots. Live your values privately before preaching them publicly. The world needs leaders with genuine moral conviction, not just moral rhetoric. It needs people whose public face matches their private reality. Maybe it's you. Remember, the most powerful moral argument isn't the one you make with words, it's the one you make with your life. Let your character be so authentic that your actions speak louder than your speeches ever could. Now, my child, if you're curious about something else, another philosophy, another story, or even a question you've been pondering, just let me know in the comments. I'll take your suggestion to heart and consider it for our next voice note together. Until then, rest well, and may your mind always stay curious. I love you, from your coolest father.